All right. Good Monday morning, everyone. It's off to a little bit of a groggy start for me this morning, but you guys are listening to Author Talk with me, Amy, Sandy, and Russell, and our lovely guest today is Shane. So, you guys,
It's Monday.
let me tell you about my crazy weekend, okay? I had to go buy blue light filter glasses, which I haven't had to buy because I was doing the Lovapalooza Summit this weekend. And
Tell
I
us what
literally,
the Lovapalooza Summit is.
no, we had people on here. They know what it is. And then I was at my computer desk, you guys, for the longest time I've probably ever been. From like 8:45 in the morning until like 7 at night. I was told I needed to put a bucket in my office because I was literally back to back interviewing and talking with all kinds of different genre, like romance genre writers.
What?
And everything. We were talking about their writing style and how they, went into writing, some like off the wall questions. If they had to give up one thing to make them a better writer, what would it be? And the most interesting answer to that question that I got was self-doubt. I never, like, my mind never went there. So I learned so many cool things. I got to interview, you guys, the New York Times bestseller, like multiple times, Rachel Van Dyken. And let me just tell you, she's freaking awesome. Okay. I was nervous as hell going into that because she's like, this big New York Times bestseller, which always makes me just nervous in general. But she became a New York Times bestseller. This is for all you indies out there, on a book that she self-published herself. She became a New York Times bestseller the first time off of that book that she published herself. There's hope out there, okay? It can happen. Not that it won't. It can happen. And so it was such a fabulous conversation. It was a really long weekend. My days are blending together, but the fact that Author Talk was today is what drew me into Monday. Russell, what did you do this weekend?
I got on the Appalachian Trail finally.
Ooh, okay.
And the one thing that I learned put the picture up, Amy.
I got it.
We hiked one of the up to one of the falls, and the one thing I got to tell you, the Appalachian Trail is a very cool place. Shane, have you hiked the Appalachian Trail, any part of it yet?
I've only done a very small section of it.
So you've done a little of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Josh, Amy's husband, has done a little bit part of it too. I got to tell you, number one, the people around the Appalachian Trail that are on it, playing with it, it's an awesome group of people. But I got to tell you, the Appalachian Trail is much more serious and harder than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It is.
I spent a half day on it. I was toast. How do you spend a week on it? And you camp out I don't know. No, Josh spent 2 or 3 days on it.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Alone.
How much have you done,
Shane? You had Melinda. He did it alone. Like nobody. He was on his own. Yeah, I know. He's crazy. Chased by wild dogs, saw bears, all kinds of stuff. He learned
I did just a really short sort of like day hike, like in the Max Patch, sort of near Hot Springs, North Carolina. Like it's very much sort of a self-contained section of it. But yeah, I mean, it's very cool and it's beautiful, but yeah, the people are all like wildly interesting and down to earth, but also the hike itself is no joke. Like no part of it is a joke, right? Did I offend Russell?
No, he's coming back. He's obviously having Wi-Fi issues where he lives. But
I was like, man, all of this talk about how tough-skinned he is, and he's the first one out the door.
See, Russell,
good, Shane.
Shane thought that you got your feelings hurt and you left.
You left. Oh my
God.
God.
I thought maybe you were like, I got to go hit the Appalachian Trail again now.
I'm so sore I can hardly walk this morning. I did a 30-mile hill walking exercise this morning just to try to get some of the soreness out. I got to tell you, it was amazing. And what'd you do this weekend, Shane and Sandy?
How far did you hike before we get off you?
across one field and up one mountain, and it took 4 hours just to do that. And then I was like, I'm a little man. I can't be a part of this.
Yeah.
It was something. But the people were awesome.
You have to like prepare for it though. It's like one of those like you have to do like longer hikes and like different inclines and stuff before you even mentally go into doing the Appalachian Trail to like prepare your body for it, because it fluctuates all the time and does a lot. Like Josh was doing that. You don't know how many times we freaking went to like the Sam Houston National Forest or whatever, national park, whatever, and hiked like different sections of the like 144 miles or whatever. We hiked like different sections that was like going to help him train for it. And at the end of the day, it was mental for him. Like being alone, not having anyone to talk to and stuff is what broke him. You know, it wasn't like the inclines and stuff. So it's a beast of an accomplishment. That's for sure. But you went out there and did it, man. I'd be proud. Power to you.
But it's beautiful, I bet, up there, right, Russell?
Oh, it was so beautiful. Which the picture that Amy only flashes on for 2 seconds shows.
It was up for a really long time, man. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's posted. I will tag you in it, Russell. I will tag you in it. Okay. Shane, what did you do this weekend?
Oh, not very much. I'm on summer break right now, right? So I teach college, and I'm lucky enough to work in a place where I get to take summers off. So I've gotten probably way too into this GTA RP. Do you guys know anything about this at all?
No, I would love to know about it.
So GTA is Grand Theft Auto, but like they've modded it, right? So it's like whenever you play it now, you're not actually even playing Grand Theft Auto anymore. They've created this open world where everyone has their own characters, and it's like serious role play. Like you have to go in with a backstory. So like my guy is a journalist. So he's
Shane,
like always
are you
writing
in a gang?
newspaper articles. And I'm not in a gang. No, I'm not.
My son is in a gang that you can watch live.
Yeah.
And they have these whole plans that they blueprint out, and then they go on there and do to people and do stuff, steal from banks, and then they get hits on their video. It's like a big deal to them.
It is.
This is a big deal what you're doing, Shane. This is consuming people.
Yeah, my character is a journalist. He works for Weasel News, and he's just recently gotten into a relationship with a cop. So
have you been killed yet?
I haven't been killed yet, but I have been kidnapped and used as a hostage in a store robbery.
By the way, that's one of the things that my son's gang does.
Yeah.
Is they kidnap people so they can steal and then escape before the police catch them.
Right.
So you've been a victim maybe of my son's gang.
Maybe. Who knows? It is all consuming though. Absolutely.
This is so funny that here we are on Author Talk talking about a game.
Well, and this is the thing, like what got me into this game is that I started watching like what Russell's talking about, watching this stuff online, and it was so consuming, and it was the most interesting and like it was very compelling storytelling, and it's the most collaborative storytelling that I've ever watched, because everyone comes in with their own character, and as those characters like overlap each other, they influence each other's stories in really organic and interesting ways. And I just wanted to like get in there and kind of play in that sandbox a little bit, and it's completely engaging.
Are you married, Shane?
I am not, but I have a girlfriend. And she also plays, so there you go.
Nice.
That's the best thing. I have to remind one of my daughter-in-laws. He was a gamer when you met him, so.
Yeah. My girlfriend actually plays a nurse in the server. Like they have some hardcore medical role play that happens as well. So she has to like treat them for their injuries when Russell's son shoots them at the bank robbery, right?
And all those gang members.
Yeah.
So this weekend, I spent the weekend with Amy doing 3 panels yesterday on the Loveapalooza summit, and we had a great time. Honestly, I had the best Sunday I've had for a while, because as soon as it was over, I went out and got in my pool and stayed there for 2.5 hours, just swimming. And I can definitely tell my arms and shoulders this morning, I can hardly move. But I had a great weekend, and part of it was being like reintroduced to some authors that were part of the Lovapalooza. And I bought a book, and I went through and I was very impressed with the platform that you guys used, Amy. That was, oh my gosh, you could go to a stage, you could go to a round table, you could go to the expo and then go through the booths. It was the best virtual thing I've done yet. So that was really good. So congratulations to you, Amy, and Rita and Dina, and also Alex, who was our host for our moderator, I guess, for a few times. So it was a really great weekend, and they did a lot of work on this thing. So yeah. I'm really anxious to hear the results.
Well, but you guys, okay, no one on here has mentioned it, and I'm going to go ahead and mention it because it wouldn't be June if I didn't. But you guys, my birthday is Thursday. We're like in countdown mode for my birthday. I know Russell could care less.
Well, I said in the beginning you would be 30 this week.
Oh, she did. I'm sorry. I missed it. But yes, I will be 30 on the 30th.
You're a big girl now. Nobody's really worried about it anymore.
It's never going to happen again, Russell. Let me enjoy my 30 on 30th, okay? Because it's never going to happen again. And I'm very excited. I'm excited to be
Amy, to my credit, I just met you, so I didn't know.
No, I know. I forgive you. I forgive you totally. So, and we just became friends, so you didn't
happy
even
birthday.
know. Like,
Shane, you coward. Shane's a coward.
Hey, you know what? It's my birthday week, and I am going to claim that.
You don't get a week. You get like 30
minutes.
Russell,
I am so disappointed you're not going to be able to come and go with us to take.
Yeah, I actually really tried to do that. I
know.
It's okay. I got to see him on my birthday week. He got to kick off my birthday week with me, Russell. I'm so excited for her. I love it.
With your birthday truck.
It's not a truck. It's an SUV. It's a lot of fun. I have learned some really cool stuff, but I'm sure all of you guys have already had that. But I was like living back in the day. So I have so many cool things. I love it.
So people are listening to us. Shane, people are listening to us. More people listen to us on our podcast than actually watch our show. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're on all the channels. We were actually surprised that we're top 10 in book podcasts. We're surprised about it. We're excited that people get to hear about your books today. Amy, where can people find us?
Yes. So to sum it up, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, you can hear us. But Amazon Music, Spotify, Good Pods, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, all of those, you can listen to us. If you want to see us be super animated, and that's not including Russell because he's not very animated.
Because I'm pretty.
Animated or not.
I'm pretty.
Sandy,
I don't care what you say.
Yeah, we are super, super animated. And, I can control what comes out of my mouth, but not my facial expressions. Go over to our Facebook group and join it. Follow us on YouTube, or all of us are open books on social media. You're more than welcome to add us. Follow us, whatever. If you want to be on, make sure you just send me a Facebook message. It's the quickest way to get in touch with me nowadays, and we will get you on for sure. But we are so grateful for everyone listening to us. We started this, or Russell was the one that had the idea, because we just love hearing these stories. And we are just every week shocked that people are listening to us, because this is just fun for us. So thank you guys so much. Tonight on Through the Eyes of Authors, which Shane is a membership author group that I run Monday nights. Tonight is going to be a free-for-all. It is, what do you want to learn for the rest of the year, on top of us gearing up for the 12 days of page turners. I know I already have December on my mind, but in order to be a part of the 12 days of page turners, you have to be running some kind of promotion on your book. And so we're going to get the gears turning about what promotion you should run, what are you comfortable running, what's going to be popular, things like that. So that's going to be tonight on Through the Eyes of Authors at 7 p.m. Central Time. But I want to get talking about Shane and his books, because he is a award winner from BookFest, which makes me, I'm just excited for you and your little medals that are on your website. I'm super excited about us. So tell us a little bit about The Smoke in His Eyes.
Yeah, so The Smoke in His Eyes is the second novel in sort of like an extended universe that I've been writing in for a little while. it is, I call it the world of muses. It sort of takes the old like Greek mythology of the muses as inspiration for the different arts, and recasts that in a contemporary setting and sort of reimagines what muses might be. And so the world of muses then presents a series of standalone stories that tell like that all together do tell one overarching story for this world, right? But there's not necessarily, I mean, there is an in-world chronology, right? Like if you wanted to read them in order, but each one stands alone. They all nod to each other in ways that, you get if you've read them, but not necessarily, it's not necessary that you have read all of them in order to like follow along, if that makes sense. So it's like taking any individual Marvel Cinematic Universe movie and watching it by itself, right? But then if you watch all of them together, then you get to experience like this, like a different experience, right?
Yeah. So how did the idea kind of come about?
It's all an accident, and I never actually meant to write a book. And this is something that I've maintained from the beginning. I started as a poet in my creative writing journey, I suppose. And so when I started writing the very first novel in this group of books called A Year Since the Rain, my initial intention was to write this poem, a really sad poem about a breakup, and I was trying to like reinvent the form. I was like, it has to be different, right? Like everyone has written a breakup poem, and so I was trying to like reinvent the wheel on this thing. And so what I ended up doing is writing 6 pages of the worst poetry that I've ever written in my entire life. And I thought, well, this isn't working, right? But the title of that poem was called A Year Since the Rain. And then sometime later, I started writing a short story for some reason. I had not really like played in that form very much. But I think at this point I had maybe like written 1 or 2 like just short pieces. And so when I got into it, I started writing a story about this town that had gone into like a terrible drought for an entire year. And I was focused in on this one small neighborhood in the town and the people that lived in that neighborhood. And then it occurred to me like maybe what I was writing here is like, instead of a breakup poem, maybe I'm writing like an allegory for a breakup, right? And so I ended up, I thought, well, I'll just write a short story. And then it was like, 15,000 words long. And I thought, okay, so like maybe I'm writing a novella. And then it was like 20,000 words long. And then I was like, at some point you have to admit, like you've embarked on a novel journey, right? And then lean into it. So that was the first novel. After that's done, I think you just kind of embrace it, right?
So Shane, I'm curious, since this was your first novel and before that you had written poetry, now you're into characters and character development and all that.
Yeah.
So, but you had your creative writing background.
Mm.
But what led you into, or what helped you, understand character development and how to do that in a book, in a novel versus a novella or something?
Yeah, right. Like that's tricky. I think a lot of it has to do with my probably just my educational background. I have a master's degree in English literature. I studied literature as an undergrad as well. So like I've just been studying stories for a really long time, and there's creative writing sprinkled into that degree program as well. But I've also been fascinated with stories since I was a child, right? Like this is something that has always spoken to me. I was writing screenplays and I was writing little books when I was just a little kid and designing book covers and stuff and all that stuff. Like I think storytelling is just really important in my family. And so, I grew up
designing book covers is different than creating characters.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely, for
That's
sure. But
amazing that you do both.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't design book covers now, but as a child, I was just fascinated with story and like what that looked like and what that meant. And so, obviously when you're a kid, you're less focused maybe on like the finer points of like what makes a character tick or like what their motivations might be. But that desire to understand how stories fit together and how they evoked the specific emotions that they evoke, like that was always in me. Because when I was a kid, I would read like Goosebumps or something, right? Like these little like scary books for kids. And I loved the way that they made me feel. And I wanted to be able to emulate that, right? And so I was always a student of story long before I started writing novels myself, right? And then obviously, like I think you add the formalized education into that, where in university we spend a lot of time talking about character and character motivation and what how the writer of this particular novel reveals certain things about character, how they develop, what their arcs are, static versus dynamic, all of that stuff, right? And so yeah, like, but I think that at my heart, I'm like just really interested in people, and why people are the way that they are, and why people do the things that they do, and I think that probably informs it a lot, just that natural curiosity about human nature.
Well, I loved your website, how you started off, and I love that you've emphasized this and mentioned it several times. And you start off by saying Shane Wilson is a storyteller, and honestly, that gets me every time because I love stories and I love people's stories.
Yeah.
So, what is the Shane Wilson story behind these books?
Yeah, like where I come from and all of that.
Well, whatever you want to, it's your story.
Yeah, I mean, I would put a lot of emphasis of the Shane Wilson story on growing up around those storytellers, right? My grandfather was such a great storyteller. It was so cool to like just sit there and listen to him tell these, I mean, honestly, like the stories that my grandfather would tell, or that my father would tell, or my mom, or whoever, like they're recounting these events that honestly may or may not have even happened, right? They definitely didn't happen the way that they told them. And what they're telling me is the story about probably like one of the most boring things on the planet. But the way that they tell it, and the power that they have, the control that they have over their language, and the way that they talk about the people in these stories and everything was so powerful to me as a young person. And I wanted to understand that power. And I think that, when I was in 5th grade, my grandfather, who I looked up to so much and who was such a great storyteller, had a stroke, and he lost a lot of his capacity for language as a result of that. And he lost access to some of those like finer details in his memory that made his stories so wildly compelling. He had a hard time sort of like reaching for the name of a person. It would really be frustrating to him. And so as someone who grew up in a family who valued the oral tradition in a really major way, I saw in that moment the weakness of the oral tradition, right? That it is a fickle thing, right? And it is a temporary thing. It lives on in the next generation as long as you can communicate those stories. But I discovered in those moments, I think, the power of the written word, the power of making these things a matter of record, right? And so I think that all sort of informs why I was fascinated with story and why I gravitated to doing those things, to writing little stories and making little books and things, or making movies or whatever it ended up being. And I think the next piece of that puzzle is probably that my parents were always wildly supportive of whatever creative pursuit I was pursuing at the time. They bought me a typewriter when I was a little kid. It's not that one, but it's one like it. And I remember learning how to spell words by like sitting at the typewriter and asking my mom like the hardest words I could think of, which were words like rhinoceros or whatever, right? Like as a little kid. And like I would hunt and peck the keys as she would spell it out loud for me, which I think kind of ingrained the mechanics of the work into me, like from a very young age. And yeah, it's just always sort of been a part of me. Maybe it's like a DNA thing in a way, a genetics thing. I don't know, but
it's a family thing for sure.
Yeah.
I have a couple. Can I ask a couple questions, Sandy?
Sure.
Because I am dying to know what you studied. You studied literature both as an undergraduate and graduate. There must have been some type of literature that you really preferred studying in college. What was it? And Sandy, as we get to these questions, I would love to hear more about this little town and how it evolved and what's going on in this little town that is a part of his universe.
Yeah. So a few things there. I guess I can talk about the little town first, maybe. What was the first question again?
The first question was, what did you? Well,
my favorite kinds of literature. Sorry, yeah,
literature.
So I focused, as I got through undergrad. In undergrad, obviously, you don't really focus that much, but I got really into like 20th century or like modern and postmodern literature of the British Commonwealth and British Empire, and not British centric or Anglo centric, but I was really interested in the literature of the colonies, and like the sort of hybrid forms that were coming out of those different colonies, and that's where I landed on magical realism, and I studied. I guess my first love was before magical realism. My first love was Virginia Woolf. I read tons of Virginia Woolf. I loved what she did with Stream of Consciousness. I thought it was incredibly compelling.
I think that her Stream of Consciousness, her version of it, was the most beautiful version of it.
I agree. It's poetry, right? The Waves is one of my favorite novels. It is just, the whole thing is poetry. Then as I was wrapping up undergrad and moving into my graduate program, I was in class with a professor who was whose focus was post-colonial literature specifically, and so we were reading like J.M. Coetzee, who wrote Waiting for the Barbarians, but she was a big fan, I guess, or she went to Salman Rushdie's work often, and so I found myself really into the work of Rushdie and the magical realists, Arundhati Roy and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, right? Like some of those folks. But I was really like fascinated with Midnight's Children, and wrote my master's thesis on Rushdie's work and sort of looked at bookend pieces of that. Looked first at Midnight's Children and then at Fury, which at that point was one of his most recent works. He's obviously published more since then, but yeah, so that was my focus in graduate school, was a lot of like magical realism stuff.
And that led us to where you are now.
Absolutely.
So
it did 100. Yeah.
Tell us about the evolution of this town, and then I'll give it back to you, Sandy. I'm just dying to hear about it, because it sounds like he never planned on this town, and this town grew up not in his control, but in its own control.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. The town, all of the stories aren't set in the same town. It's really kind of a regional story. And it is sort of located in a fictionalized version of the Southeast. Like the Appalachian Mountains factor into it, right? There are certain things that are set there. The Smoke in His Eyes, for example, the book that we've sort of been like working up to, is largely set in, or at least like the third act of that story is set in the mountains. The first novel, though, A Year Since the Rain, which is the little town that we were talking about, is this fictional town called Wasser or Wasser, right? Because it's like this fictionalized version of like what would have been a German colony before, or German settlement. And then since then, like they've lost the pronunciation, all of that stuff. But it's this kind of like isolated town that's surrounded on three sides by a river, and how water factors into like the local economy and the local like culture in a major way. And it's really, I think, influenced by this town that I was working in when I graduated from college. I was living and working in Albany, Georgia, which was a town like that. It wasn't necessarily surrounded on three sides by water, but there was a river that ran through the middle of town, and they had just sort of come through the rebuilding phase of a really bad flood. And my students in my courses were really impacted by that, because they were all children when it happened, right? And so that fear of the river, or respect for the river, was like something that really was in that local texture. And so I took that in the novel and sort of flipped it over, right? So like Wasser is a fictionalized version of Albany in that way. And the water was so important. Like the river in the city or in the town is why certain businesses were coming to town and all of that, right? And so then when the drought hits and the rivers dry up around Wasser, it sort of forces everything there to shut down, right? Like, because everything is tied explicitly to the presence of water. And it sort of forces the city and the protagonist, Alan, into this like existential crisis in a lot of ways, right? So like that city doesn't factor into, I mean, it is mentioned in the other stories, but it's not the sole setting of these books, right?
Well, get us to your newest book then, since you said that we're wandering toward it.
Yeah, we're getting there, right? So The Smoke in His Eyes is the next chapter in the world of muses, and it is like a traditional muse story. It's about a musician named TJ who is technically incredibly proficient at music, but he wants more for himself, right? He can look at a piece of sheet music, he can play like a prodigy, right? But he was missing some sort of like substance to that, right? He wants more out of music than he's getting through his technical prowess. And so he starts making music with this girl, Leela, that he meets in college. She plays bass. And so they have a little rock band, and she tries to help him sort of like unlock that part of him, but they end up butting heads because they have different reasons for wanting to go into music to begin with. And as they drift apart, he finds this, like the muse character in this story, whose name is Muna, who's a visual artist, and helps him realize like that inside of him, he does have these sources of inspiration if he only could figure out how to unlock them. And she helps him sort of figure those things out. And so the novel is sort of focused on what it means to be inspired and what it means to pursue art, and what it is that drives certain people to share the things that they create, which is an incredibly intimate and private thing in a lot of ways, and what it is that makes some of us want to put that out there. And so those sort of the driving questions behind that novel, which is largely informed by how I felt after my first novel came out, right? Why is it that I felt compelled to do this? Why is it that I felt compelled to share it? Those sorts of questions kind of informed the writing of that second book.
Wow, what a background. I'm telling you, you could have gone in so many directions. I really have enjoyed hearing how, and thank you, Russell, for those questions, because that was great. I want to get back to Shane Wilson, the story, and in your personal life, because I'm just reading in your bio that you, where did I read that? So you were born in Alabama, raised in Georgia, and now live in North Carolina. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So where were you born in Alabama?
I was born in Birmingham.
So I was born in Anniston, Alabama.
Okay.
So about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I don't think an hour and a half, maybe an hour north of Birmingham. So I love that area. I grew up hating the area, but I've now since become an adult. So my family goes back there every year, but they've migrated. Some of them to Georgia, and some went on to North Carolina. So what part of North Carolina?
I'm living in Fayetteville, home of Fort Bragg.
Okay. So my brother lives in Sanford. Do you know where?
Okay. Yeah, very close by, actually.
Yeah, it's very close. Because every time we leave, I see a sign that says, Fayetteville or something like that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to find out, because I have absolutely fallen in love with that part of the country. I take so many pictures when I go from my brother's porch, because deer walk through the yard. There's a pond down at the end of the hill. It's just like amazingly beautiful and green.
I've fallen in love with North Carolina too. I was always told that I was a Georgia boy through and through, that I didn't belong anywhere but there. That's what this terrible ex-girlfriend used to tell me. But
did she mean it in a derogatory tone?
I don't know. I don't know what she. I think probably,
because I like Georgia
honestly,
people. I've lived here 6 months. I love it. I love these people.
And Russell, I have to say, where you live is beautiful too. Because when we were crossing, I sent you a text when we crossed over. What's the name? Chattahoochee River, and I'm like, Chattahoochee. We have to be close to Russell. And he lives 1 block from there.
It makes me smile, Shane, every time I hear the name Chattahoochee. Some of the names, if you're a Texan or you grew up in another part of the country, there's certain names that just make you smile when you hear them, because you didn't know they were real. You thought they were in songs or something.
That's how I feel about it.
Whoever thought that would be a river's name?
My 2 favorite town names in Georgia are Santa Claus, which is a town in Georgia, and also Between. Between is my favorite because I had a student that lived in Between one time, and I didn't know that Between was a place. And so I was like, what is the name of the place that you're from? And she goes, I live in Between. And I was like, all right, like in between what and what? She's like, no, in between. It's like a classic Who's on First routine, right? And I'm just a sucker for a Who's on First.
Oh my gosh. I can't keep up with y'all. I don't leave Texas. Like I straight up.
Yeah, that's going to change though.
Born, and there's not that many people. Well, Russell, both of you guys are born in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Russell
Him and
was
Melinda
born.
are.
But the worst part about Russell is he not only was he born in Texas, he was born in West Texas. So
There's nothing worse, Shane. There's nothing worse.
than West Texas.
It's the
Russell.
stereotype about Texas. You know, no trees, flat, forever wind.
Desert.
That's where I'm from. That's not all in Texas.
Abilene,
I do.
Is Abilene even more remote than where you're from?
No. I do. I want to get back to Shane's writing, though.
Okay.
I got to tell you, get off that crap. I want to get on Shane's writing. I want to know about this third part of this newest book that's in the mountains.
Yeah.
So did you write that as you were hiking? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, it was something like I didn't really know how this book was going to end. And then after I applied for this artist residency at a place in the Western North Carolina mountains called Azul. And it's this magical cabin. And I went out there, and it is 30 minutes from anywhere. The nearest town is Hot Springs, has 300 people in it. So there's really nothing there, right? It's very much off the like, I was going to say off the grid, but it's not really off the grid. But it is just this isolated place. It's run by this woman named Camille, who is this like beautiful old French woman who has like taught herself how to be an architect and has built this house, like designed it around, like there was a pre-existing cabin, and then she's built all of this around it to make it this like spiraling masterpiece, this like living house. And as I was working through the second book in the world of muses, and I was starting to kind of think about, okay, well, where are the muses coming from? I thought this house is would be the kind of place, and this landscape would be the kind of place where inspiration could be born, right? Inspiration can be born in a lot of places, but I was like sort of witnessing in real time my inspiration being born out of this place. And so I reimagined this cabin as the school, right? Sort of like the training ground for the muses, where muses were created or taught, you know, how to be agents of inspiration and creativity. And then I reimagined Camille as like the headmaster of this school. And so in the novels, it exists on like a different plane, right? Like the physical structure of the house is in our world, but like the muses sort of have to cross over from another plane to get into this world. Yeah.
And it took us 37 minutes to get to the center of your universe.
That's right. Yeah.
It took us too long. It's our bad. And Shane, by the way, it's bad for not getting there closer. So you have this school where muses go, and then each story is it about some muse that leaves the school.
So what happens is, so the stories all focus on a character that is not a muse and how that person finds the muse that is meant for them, right? And then it sort of becomes how that muse helps them. Because in the first novel, it's not really about art or inspiration in the traditional sense. It's about a guy who is like sort of traumatized or grieving, really, like he's grieving the loss of a father, and that he like didn't get to say goodbye to. And so in that novel, the inspiration is like inspiration for personal growth and ownership of past mistakes and how you can push through like grief.
Is this your version of ancient Greek mythology? Is that what we're seeing? Is that what we have here?
In a way, yeah. Because the first novel not only uses muses as an inspiration, it uses also the fates, like the traditional Greek fates, pulls heavily from those. And then like mostly the muses, but they're in this universe or in this world, they're more than just the 9 traditional muses, because I've sort of imagined it that like these muses set out into the world and they find a group of the people, the series of people that they are meant to help in whatever way that they're meant to help, right? Because I sort of see inspiration in a little more looser definition than just like creative inspiration, right? And so they set off into the world, and each novel then focuses on one person that those muses are helping. The story that I'm working on now is kind of like drifting away from that central tenet and is focusing like there's a muse that is the protagonist of this next book that I'm working on. and it's her journey to try to reconnect with one of her friends from the school. And so like it's a little slightly different focus there, as we're starting to like turn the corner on the back end of this World of Muses saga, I think. But yeah, so that's sort of where we're working from for now.
And Shane, you have another book coming out this fall, right?
Yeah, this fall, hopefully in September, I think we're still on schedule for that. It's called The Woman with 1,000 Faces, and I'm pretty pumped for it because I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever written. And I'm not one to like really toot my horn that much, but I'm like really into this story.
So this is not the third book in a series, or anything.
It's the third book in the world, right? And so in the in-universe chronology for this story would go, I've kind of written them a little out of order. Like the first story that happens is The Smoke in His Eyes, and then A Year Since the Rain, and then The Woman with 1,000 Faces. I didn't know that I was writing a series like this when I started, so I wrote A Year Since the Rain first, if that makes sense. But again, they're all standalone stories. You don't have to read them in any particular order in order to follow them along, you know?
Well, we can't wait to read the new one when it comes out. I'm right now on Amazon looking at The Smoke in His Eyes. I am definitely getting a copy of that to read. So, but would you suggest I read one of the others first, or read the other one?
No, so the first two are absolutely interchangeable. You can read them in any order. Starting with The Woman with 1,000 Faces, though, like that one and the next two are going to need to be done in order because they feed one to the next. And that's sort of serving as like the conclusion, at least for now, for this world, as we build up to like kind of an apocalyptic moment and sort of explore what happens on the backside of that. So yeah, like I'm super excited for The Woman with 1,000 Faces. I think it's beautiful.
Well, I know that you're working with Mickey. He's your publicist. And so hopefully, and I know he and Amy do a lot together to help each other. And hopefully you can come back again when the next book comes out and we can help you with the launch for that.
Yeah, would love it.
Now, you are welcome back anytime. I know Russell probably still has so many questions for you, and he's probably so mad that we didn't dive into everything that he wants to. But sometimes when you're limited to 45 minutes, you don't get to touch on everything. So I know that we would love to have you back. I'll get with Mickey and we'll have you back.
Absolutely.
For sure. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us and just help us learn a little bit more about your books. I love the title, The One with 1,000 Faces. I love that title. I think it's unique, and I can just tell like how happy and pleased you are with that book. So I'm definitely going to be on the lookout, and I'll check it out when it comes out. But you guys remember tonight on Through the Eyes of Authors, it is a free-for-all. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. We hope that you guys have a fantastic Monday and a great rest of your week. And we'll be back next Monday, which it will be 4th of July, but we will be back. But until then, everybody, have a great week. Bye.